Okay, so we passed 2 o'clock, so I would propose to start. So welcome to the ENTSO-E webinar for presenting the market report and the balancing report 2020. My name is Kilian Kröger. I'm working for Amprion, and I'm the convener of the Reporting on Market Integration work group at ENTSO-E, who is responsible for drafting the reports we present you today. So next slide, please, Thilo. Yeah, so before we actually jump into the content, I will quickly introduce the agenda. So after my introduction, I will hand over to Kjell Barmsnes, our ENTSO-E Market Committee Chair, for providing us with some opening notes. Afterwards, we will jump into the market report, and the main findings will be presented by Karel Silvester, André Estermann, and myself. And afterwards, we will go on with a balancing report, which will be presented by our experts, Sarah Meyer and Ignacio de la Fuente. So we will close with a summary and a Q&A session, which will be moderated by Thilo Kirchinger, who is the PMO of this project. And for this Q&A session, so next slide, please, Thilo. So you can basically post your question at every time during the webinar. So therefore, please go to slido.com and insert the event code you see here on the screen. Or you can simply scan the QR code, and then you can also rate the questions. And I think you know the game, so the top rated questions will have a higher probability that they will be picked at the end. And please note that the webinar will be recorded, and we will leave the slides for a few moments on the screen to make sure that everybody can log into Slido. Okay, so I would propose we go on, and I would hand over to Kjell, who will provide us with some opening notes. So Kjell, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Kilian. I'm Kjell Barmsnes, and I'm the chair of the ENTSO-E Market Committee. And again, from my side, welcome to this webinar where we will present these, I think, very important and rather extensive reports on market and balancing markets in Europe. So market integration is really the process of progressively harmonizing the rules of these markets. And in a fully integrated market, the electricity can flow freely in response to price signals through Europe. And this will bring major economic benefits to the society while being one of several enablers for the implementation of the European Green Deal. And I think these benefits have also been highlighted in a report recently issued by Acer, where they looked at sort of the benefit of the integrated energy market in Europe. So I think cornerstone of the integrated market is economic efficiency. We establish market prices where we use the most efficient generating resources. This also result in security of supply. We send electricity where it is the most needed. And it also encourages or results in sustainability. It's a source to ensure that we can integrate renewable energy sources in the system and thereby reducing CO2 emissions. So it is really the network codes or guidelines, the European legislation that paves the way for this integrated electricity market. And the TSOs and our partners, such as the NEMOs, the regulators, and Acer, we work intensively on implementing all of these regulations in order to ensure that we can further harmonize, integrate, and make more efficient the single European electricity market. So can we go to the next slide, please? So the markets, or should I call the market segments that we are talking about, are the long-term markets, the short-term markets, and the real-time markets. And these markets are regulated by a set of regulations or network code and guidelines. In this case, we have the forward capacity allocation regulation, the capacity allocation and congestion management regulation, and the EB electricity balancing regulation. And each one of these, or the first one, sets out the rules for calculation and allocation of long-term transmission rights. The CACM regulation addresses rules for implementation of the single day-ahead and intraday markets in Europe. And lastly, but not least, the balancing regulation sets out rules for procurement of balancing capacity and activation of balancing energy. And all of these regulations, they are result in markets, and at ENTSO-E we monitor the implementation of these regulations, and also the projects realizing the regulation. And in the following, Kilian and the colleagues, they will present an overview of the market report for 2022, and also the balancing report for 2022. I think this will be a very good webinar, so I wish you good discussions, and with this I will hand over to Kilian. So please, Kilian.
Yes, thank you very much, Kiel, for providing us with this appetizer. Maybe just as a note for this slide, so you can actually browse all reports by going to ENTSO-E/marketreports.de or .com, so to download the full reports. Okay, so we will start with the market report. So before I will hand over to the experts, I will give you a bit of background. So the market report is kind of the flagship of ENTSO-E's annual market monitoring activities. So it's basically reports on the progress in the market integration projects of 39 member TSOs from 34 countries. It covers the time period from June 21 to May 2022. And we have to do it actually according to legislation by forward capacity allocation guideline, the CACM and the EBGL, as just presented by Kiel. And we have a very broad range of topics. So we have a dedicated chapter which shows ideas of European TSOs on how to improve European electricity markets. Then we show the implementation progress across all timeframes during the recent year. And then we have an overview throughout all products, so basically from long-term transmission capacities via day-ahead and intraday to real-time, meaning balancing. So having said that, we will start with a long-term time frame, and I would hand over to our first expert, to Karel, who will present us the long-term markets which are governed by the FCA. Karel, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your word. So I will present the first SCA part. Here we can start with the single allocation platform, which is the platform where we allocate the long-term transmission rights in the monthly, quarterly, and yearly time frame and periods. JAL, Joint Allocation Office, is the SIP operator, which was appointed by the OTSOs as the, let's say, indisputable #1 pick for this position. The single allocation platform is, let's say, a final step in terms of the SCA implementation, and also the vast majority of the SCA requirements is already implemented, and therefore we have only a few steps ahead of us which still needs to be implemented, but in the end we are in the finish line in terms of FCA, and all functions in, let's say, the final mode as of the 1st November 2018, where the single allocation platform was launched. The allocation is so far really stable, and we are receiving really good, let's say, feedback also from the market participants. We had only a few operational incidents, but all of these incidents were solved in due time, and the capacity was always allocated in line with the harmonized allocation rules. The single allocation platform and the operator itself is governed by the sub council, which is consisting of the TSOs and JAO representatives. And the sole, let's say, purpose of this competent body is to decide on the operational topics, budget related stuff, and fulfillment of the subtask itself, and of course their improvement in future and the time of the operation. We are handling for, as of 2022, 65 biddings on borders. We've added a few ones as of our last market report, and we have more than 300 registered market participants. And that should be all for the introduction of the subcount, the single allocation platform. And we can head off to the next slide, please. Thank you. In comparison with the last year and also the last year market report, we can see an improvement in the number of participants that are normally participating in the auctions. And with, let's say, this effect, we can also see quite a vast improvement in the bids that are normally submitted for the auction. However, the, let's say, average bid size didn't really change that much, but we can see quite an improvement in terms of the volatility and how much the auctions are really used. So we can really say that the improvement is there, and we are happy that market participants really value these let's say, hedging opportunities that we are providing them. One of the, let's say, main aspect is that not really that much physical transmission rights are truly nominated. We can see that the nomination percentage is around 5%, which is quite lower than the last year, where we were around 12, I believe. And that is also quite a sign for us that it's okay to move more to the financial transmission rights. And that is one, let's say, improvement or switch that we are currently improving in terms of the long-term transmission rights. And we are moving more to the financial transmission rights, and the, let's say, biggest switch of the long-term transmission rights to the financial ones were with the launch of the flow-based market coupling in core region, where only one remaining border in the core region is still physical, but the rest of them are financial already. And that should be all for this slide also, and we can move to the last one. Okay, thank you. As I said, we are moving to financial transmission rights, but one of the let's say biggest switches will be also switch to the 50 minutes products that will happen in the future, and we are currently working on the implementation. But the, let's say, biggest project that was established within the sub-council is the long-term flow-based allocation, which will happen for core and Nordic CCRs according to their methodologies for the capacity calculation for the long-term transference according to the SCA regulation. This project will significantly affect the main sub-operator IT tools and also all the tasks related to it. So quite a broad restructuration of the auction system and the web pages will happen with this change. Also the market rules and of course operational procedures. Flow-based allocation is really discussed with the market participants. We had 2 workshops, really huge workshops, also with HR. So we can really coordinate what the market participant wants, and so we can achieve the best solution that they would like us to see. Currently, we are really working 100% on developing the methodologies and changing the sub-rules and all the other technicalities. But we are planning to launch the flow-based allocation in 2024, and that should lead into a huge economic surplus increase which is estimated in around 27%. That was also presented during the workshops. From the procedural point of view, no crucial change should be expected from the market participants, as the bidding system will be still maintained, and that would include also the long-term capacity rights results that they will receive. But the main, let's say, change will be in the algorithm and the optimization itself. And for the other changes, we are mainly talking about some digitalization. We have a broad spectrum of the communication with market participants and the stakeholders. We have user groups, regular surveys, and so on. But more or less, JAO, as the operator of the sub-council, is doing really good. But of course, there are some improvements, and those are, as I said, mainly in terms of the digitalization, the graphical user interfaces, and the websites. But the major changes will be the long-term flow-based allocation and the 50-minute products. And that should be all for the implementation and the structure and the status quo of the single allocation platform.
Thank you. So
Andre, I think you can go ahead. We just have to switch slides.
Just go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Tilo.
Then I just move forward. Hello, everybody. I'm Restermann. I'm convening the market integration group, working group, relevant, and they are active in the FCA and CACM sphere, and particularly on, of course, on the further refinement of those, whereas we also, as you will see in the next slides, they are very active on the update on the methodology, which are part of the SCA as well as the CACM regulation. Moving forward, you can see that we have the harmonized auction rules, allocation rules updated, but we are currently again in the process of updating them due to the fact that, as Kari just mentioned, we are working rather heavily on the introduction of long-term flow-based, hence a subsequent update of the methodologies is needed. In general, I think it's fair to say that the frequency of the updates of the methodologies is increasing, and we do see that almost on a yearly, if not half-yearly basis, we need to update the methodologies, actually showing the dynamic nature apparently of the market requirements and the need to further evolve functionality-wise, like with the introduction of flow-based. The other one is introduced already by Caro. Long-term flow-based is a rather big project that we are currently working on, engaging with the market participants, with the regulators, as well as with the single allocation platform. And we are rather hopeful that we can continue in this kind of positive environment throughout the years in the course of the implementation and the further refinement of the methodologies needed in order to fully reflect all aspects of long-term flow-based allocation. Moving to the next slide. We are also working further on the CCRs. One important item is, of course, the inclusion of Norway, and we are still pending finalization of that process within Norway. So we are hopeful that we can also update the methodology accordingly in the next couple of weeks, months. CID, not only in CACM relevant, we did an update. We are currently working again on an update of CID to reflect multiple items, which we have not yet been able to tackle, and which also is rather important to the further evolution of flow-based market coupling. Hence, this is a rather active work that we are currently engaging in. Harmonized redispatching as well as counter trading, the cost sharing of that, the template methodology has been approved. We are currently working on that, and also with the NRAs, how to take the next steps. So this has been almost finalized now on the TSO side. So we're hopeful that we can then take the next steps with the NRAs soonish. Moving to the next slide. Yeah, so what we also did rather prominently, jointly TSOs and NEMO, is the further refinement of market coupling under one governance umbrella called the Market Coupling Steering Committee, MCSC, where we not only had our first meetings, but where we made also decisive steps in not only implementing CACM 2.0 or early implementing the new legislation, the draft legislation at the moment, but also going beyond the previous cooperation, making it more leaner, making it more fit for the future, making the entire project more agile to deal with this extensive workload that we have in front of us, not just functionality-wise, where we move, for example, the 15 minutes, but also many other aspects, for example, the introduction of intraday auctions are rather important topics. Hence, the collaboration of this major project needs to be further refined throughout this year, but most likely also the coming years. We finalized the CACM annual report, and this will be delivered tomorrow. So we are rather hopeful that with this kind of detailed insight into the operations of day ahead as well as intraday market coupling, we can give again all stakeholders the assurance that we are not only working in the right direction, but also that on a quantitative basis we can show that the performance, the trades, the volumes, etc., showing rather well that those two markets are at the forefront of the decarbonization in Europe. The CACM cost report we have provided in 2020, but also now again we are in the process of providing this. The finalization process and the approval process is fully ongoing. So also this increased or extended cost report will be available soon. So we're hopeful by introducing more layers of information and more consistent information, we are also hopeful then the regulators and stakeholders have a proper view on the costs accounted for in market coupling. On the NEMO side, the aggregated order curves as well as intraday products are two advancements. We have listed them here. So also you can see further information on the NEMO's website. Moving forward. Now it comes to CACM and the markets in particular. The first one being the day-ahead market coupling. So on the next slide, you see, as I said earlier, the introduction of MCSC, also with a new logo. I think a major point is not just that we are able to improve, but also that we introduced early qualified majority voting mechanism, which will be coming into force in the September meeting. So after the summer break, rather important items will be up for decision, and in first time we will introduce qualified majority voting or to get there between the TSOs and the NEMOs. Prior to the summer break, we already introduced the first market coupling consultative group, rather a success story, I must say, with those three conveners comprised of NEMOs, TSOs, as well as one side in the market, which I think is showing that the collaboration between the market participants and the provider of market coupling infrastructure are moving along well. And then we use also this format rather efficiently to go into the nitty-gritty of further evolutions of the capabilities that we have in market coupling today and also across the next years to come. When moving forward, an important topic when it comes to day-ahead market coupling, again, yeah, thank you very much, is to understand its size and its spread over the years. So we are now not only complete in terms of topology, but we are continuously to further increase the use or the ability for the entire system, for the entire topology to deal with the outcomes of market coupling. So with the last year, with the ICP project going live, we essentially closed the loop that now all countries are involved in market coupling, and we took, of course, another major step in the right direction by introducing core flow-based this month, where we have not only full topology available, but also large part of the topology being included on a flow-based capacity calculation, but as well as a flow-based allocation parameter, which I think is rather positive. Please keep in mind that we have run 3,000 market coupling sessions, most of them successful. Yes, we do. We just had a partial decoupling back in May, but we can see that with the increased complexity, still there are 364 market coupling sessions in a year at the minimum being successful. We are still working to continue to increase operational robustness, and we are hopeful that with some of the measures that we just implemented, just for example, the increase of the timing available to troubleshoot in case it's needed, we're taking the right steps, and other measures are currently in the pipeline. Therefore, being able to not only operate successfully, but also being able on a daily basis to serve 378 million people with a consumption of more than 1.5 terawatt hours a year. Moving forward. Yeah. So we have seen that a couple of advancements are there, particularly on the euphemia, on the algorithm side, where we not only had a couple of workshops introducing where we are, where we want to go, but just a recent workshop a few days ago on the further evolution, moving in the right direction, using the algorithm to its fullest extent by in terms of software, but as well as hardware. Also, in those countries where multiple NEMOs are active, we have now included in the loop also multi-NEMO arrangements in Poland and the Italian borders, therefore allowing multiple NEMOs to be active in the bidding zones that are relevant for them. And as I said earlier, the operational timings, I think, is a major part of making the operations more robust. And whenever we can find or squeeze time to tackle issues that are to a certain extent unforeseeable, we're confident that to make market coupling even more robust now in the future, even under the circumstances that demands in terms of requirements are increasing almost on a daily basis. As you can see on the right side, here are a couple of examples what demands or what requirements are in the pipeline. Certainly one of the major projects is the introduction of 15 minutes on the entire topology, making the calculation, of course, a much more complex process as opposite to what we see in day at least on a 60-minute basis. In terms of further work, we generally stress the need to further R&D in order to not only being able to introduce the 50-minute requirement, but also potentially other requirements legally prescribed or needed in order to make the market more robust. Therefore, ongoing R&D activities on a significant scale are introduced, and on a frequent basis, market participants are involved with dedicated workshops to explain what is the current assessment level and what are the next steps, to see to what extent they can already help us moving in the right direction. Flow-based, of course, is another item which we are working on. As said, just went live with core, but that is not where we stop. We will also introduce flow-based in the Nordic region. So many or most of the countries in Europe will hopefully then in 23 also be able to use flow-based in the day-ahead time horizon. Moving to the next slide. Now we are moving to intraday. So on the next slide, you can see a similar picture as we have just shown when it comes to day ahead. In intraday, we were extremely glad to introduce with the third go live wave the Italian northern borders in market coupling, showing that topology is almost finalized. Yes, we have still a couple of borders left, but we are hopeful that also with the next report we can then show that all areas, all bidding zones in Europe are introduced in one single continuous trading algorithm. One dedicated feature or one dedicated or outstanding element when it comes to intraday is that we continuously see since its introduction in 2018, not only an outstanding performance of the system 24/7 every day, with more than 165 million trades executed in total, many of them being executed in parallel almost in milliseconds. So you see that system has really proven itself, and we are hopeful that it will further increase in volume in trades with the introduction of new borders, but also introduction of new functional requirements. Moving to the next slide. Here's a graph which we have also shown in the past, and we will show also in the future to show the steady growth of the number of transactions. We have from time to time, of course, extraordinary events where major records are broken on a daily basis in terms of 300,000+ trades. But as you can see from the graph, the overall trend is also significantly increasing over time. And we're hopeful that this positive trend in overall volume increase, trading increase, will continue in the coming years, not only by the extensions, but also by the performance of the system and the interest of market parties to join the liquidity that we can provide on a full topology. Moving to the next slide. Opposite to what we see in day ahead, where 50 minutes is something that we work on, particularly on the R&D side, in order to get the go live in the coming years. In intraday, we already stepped further. So countries which are already able to use the functionality of 50 minutes have already this kind of trading possibilities included in the intraday system. So as you can see on the side, multiple bidding zones already being there, and other countries still using the 60 minutes in majority, whereas one country is also France in this case using the 30-minute MTU. All in all, what is different to the day ahead scheme that in intraday we can gradually move to the introduction of 50 minutes, as this is as the system has been revised in that kind of way already from the beginning. And we are hopeful that with 10 years to come, that we will gradually introduce the 50 minutes, thereby also being able to have almost a similar timeline as we have in day ahead, to have the full topology included under the 50-minute regime or MTU regime. Next slide. Okay, so that's actually, I think, all of my part. Then I would hand over to Kilian. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Andre and Karel. So on the last slide concerning the market report, we would like to give you a very quick appetizer for topics which we actually have in the report, but which we cannot present today because they would simply go beyond the scope of this webinar, but they might be of your interest. So as mentioned earlier, we have a dedicated chapter in which we have listed TSO's ideas in order to improve European electricity markets in the future. So in particular, we have a section on updating regulation for short-term markets, so meaning TSO's view on the CACM 2.0 process. Then we tackle the topic of further evolution of long-term markets in the light of the upcoming revision of the FCA 2.0. And of course, we also comment on the increase of electricity wholesale prices throughout the European Union and provide our view on this topic. As in the last year, we also have an analysis of the TSO's performance in regarding to the CEP 70% target. So the 70% target is a minimum target for cross-zonal trading, which was introduced with the Clean Energy Package in 2020. And TSOs are obliged to offer this trading margin for cross-zonal trading and also to monitor the application of the minimum trading target. And overall, we have seen again a robust performance of TSOs in 2021. And noting that the last word is at the NRAs because they are responsible for assessing the TSO's compliance, we assume that we achieve overall a very high degree of compliance. Nevertheless, we have to admit that during 2021, most TSOs applied derogations or action plans. So derogation is like an exemption clause in which you can, due to special circumstances, can lower your trading margin. And an action plan is like, a transitionary period in which you gradually achieve the 70% over 5 years. And this was applied by many TSOs in 2021, but we are very optimistic that those transitionary measures will phase out in the future and that we will all achieve the 70% in the upcoming years. Moreover, we have some other topics. So just to name a few here, it's governance, operation, and expenditures of the single allocation platform and the market coupling steering committee. So for the single allocation platform, we also have a user satisfactory survey, and we have a lot of figures on the cost of the MCSC. So having said that, we can close the topic of the market report, and with an eye on Slido, please be reminded that you can post your questions always during the webinar. And I would hand over now to our balancing colleagues. So we are getting closer to real time, and Sarah and Ignacio will present us the main findings of the balancing report.
Yes, thank you, Kilian. I hope you can hear me well. So welcome, everybody. I'm Sarah Meyer, Vice Convener of the ENTSO-E Working Group Ancillary Services. And we are quite happy to present you this year the second edition of the balancing report. We had a first version published in 2020, and as this is a biannual report in accordance with the EB regulation, we now have the second version of 2022. So let's go to the next slide. As for the market report, the scope of the balancing report covers the period of 1 year, so from June 2021 to May 2022, and it includes a wide range of different topics related to the development of balancing markets, not only at a European level, but also focusing on regional developments and national and local developments. And I think it's fair to say that the European balancing platforms are somewhere at the core of the regulation and the work that was ongoing over the past month, especially when looking at the preparations for the go lives of the Picasso and Mari platform, which will go into operation this year in 2022. And I think these implementation efforts or the preparations made over the past month is quite a huge success and shows the efforts that TSOs undertook to allow countries to meet their local balancing demand through the activation of the most efficient bids available in Europe, or at least in the countries that are connected to the respective platforms. And besides achieving really significant amounts of social welfare gains and energy savings, it's also important to consider that the platforms increase the security of supply in Europe. And I think that's quite an important aspect when we look at the latest development that we see on the energy markets. Besides the energy or the balancing platforms, the report covers the efforts undertaken by TSOs to develop and harmonize different kind of market, operational and technical rules. So for example, the development of methodologies required by the EB regulation. This covers, for example, the imbalance settlement harmonization, or the methodologies for the cross-zonal capacity, allocation and calculation. And then, of course, as said, the report also covers regional information. So on the regional corporations that we have, for example, the FCR Corporation or the Nordic Balancing Project. And what is also quite interesting, and I would ask you to have a look at it, is the executive summaries of the national reports that TSOs have to prepare every second year as well, in line with EB regulation. And these executive summaries are included in the balancing report. And I think it's quite interesting to see what kind of different characteristics are actually in place in the national and local balancing markets. And with this, I think we can dive in a little bit deeper. Thilo, if you could go to the next slide. So here is an overview of the latest developments regarding the methodologies under the electricity balancing regulation. We have the regional methodologies for the cross-zonal capacity allocation. In accordance with the EB regulation, TSOs can apply 3 different time frames or processes for the allocation of cross-zonal capacity. This includes the co-optimized allocation, the market-based allocation, and the economic efficiency allocation. And each CCR, so each capacity calculation region, was able to submit one or several of these regional methodologies covering one of these timeframes. And as you can see on the slide, we have several CCRs that submitted a market-based allocation methodology, including Baltic, Core, Nordic, Greece and Italy, and Italy North. And then we also have Greece and Italy that submitted a second regional methodology covering the economic efficiency allocation process. All of these methodologies have been submitted and approved by the relevant NRAs in the past year, and the CCRs are now currently undertaking the implementation of these methodologies according to the requirements and the implementation timeframes set out in these respective methodologies. And then we have the harmonized methodology of the cross-zonal capacity allocation. So one methodology covering all of these different timeframes, including co-optimization, inverted market-based, and market-based. This is a methodology which is currently still in development. All TSOs have started the work in 2021, and are currently aligning and developing this methodology, which will then be submitted at the end of the year. Then for the capacity, cross-zonal capacity calculation, we also have regional methodologies, which CCRs are to develop according to Article 37 of the EB regulation. And when it comes to the calculation of the cross-zonal capacities, there's basically a 2-step approach which is followed. So in the first steps, all TSOs use the remaining cross-zonal capacity available after the closure of the intraday market and submit these cross-zonal capacity limits on a continuous basis to the platforms. And in this first step, there is no specific calculation of cross-zonal capacity for the balancing timeframe implemented. However, we will have a centralized IT tool coming next year, which is called the Capacity Management Module or Capacity Management Function, which will then centralize this task and update the platforms with the available or with the cross-zonal capacity limits. And then in a second step, TSOs or CCRs develop a capacity calculation for the balancing timeframe, which should be or shall be consistent with the capacity calculation methodology applied in the intraday markets. And ENTSO-E is currently facilitating the alignment and the coordination of the work ongoing in the different CCRs. So allowing CCRs to align on the core concepts and on the timeline of these methodologies, which will also be finalized and submitted in the course of this year. And then we have a last methodology, which is or which concerns the pricing methodology. All TSOs submitted an amendment to this pricing methodology to ACER, proposing an adjustment of the technical price limit for the balancing platforms. And the reason behind this is that TSOs, by observing the developments on the local and national European balancing markets, deemed it as necessary to mitigate the exposure of having high prices at the European balancing platforms, especially when switching to marginal pricing after the go-live of the platforms. And TSOs very much welcome that ACER followed this proposal and introduced or approved at the beginning of this year the amendment with introducing a price cap of 15,000 euro per megawatt hour in both directions. And the price cap is actually already in place for the Picasso platform, which went live just a couple of days ago, and will be also applicable then for the Mari platform and for the Terra platform. And then we can move on to the next slide. Thank you, Thilo. Here we have an overview of the 4 different balancing platforms that we have within Europe. The first one is the Terra platform to allow participating TSOs to exchange replacement reserves. The project involves 11 countries. However, these numbers also include observers. So at the moment, there are 6 countries operational. It's Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, Switzerland, and the Czech Republic. And 5 of these TSOs, so all of them except of CEPS, already exchange replacement reserves. CEPS is still operating in an isolated mode until the connection of Poland, which is foreseen for next year. And the main achievements of the TERRE platform in the last year, we're mainly optimizing the algorithm after first experience gained through the observation, and signing a agreement with the MARI platform for the co-ownership of the intellectual property rights of the Libra software, which is used not only for TERRE, but also for the MARI platform. And then the second platform is the IGCC, or Imbalance Netting Platform, which covers a wider scope of countries. As you can see, it's 24 countries covering 27 TSOs. I think the main achievement of the IGC project was the go live of the European Imbalance Netting Platform last year. So the project itself was already operational since 2011. But the European platform for the imbalance netting went live last year, and also the go live preparations for Greece and for Bulgaria and Serbia are currently ongoing. Sorry, they are going to connect in the course of this year, and Greece and Romania joined successfully last year, making the scope of the countries bigger and really allowing a huge amount of, or significant amount of, social welfare gains and energy savings, which we will show you also at a later stage. And then we have the remaining 2 platforms, the Picasso platform and the MARI platform, for the exchanges of AFOR and MFOR. The Picasso platform actually just went live, as said before. So at the 1st of June, CEPS was the first TSO joining the Picasso platform successfully. And then we had a second go live wave mid or end of June, the 22nd of June, where also the German TSOs and APG joined the Picasso platform, allowing for the first time a cross-zonal exchange of AFOR. And so far, I think the entire project is going very well. It's a huge success without any major issues that have been coming up since the go live. And in the course of this year, there will also be other TSOs joining the platform. I think it's Elia after the summer break, and then Elish at the end of the year or the beginning of next year. And then the other TSOs are joining over the next 2 years. And then the last one is the MARI platform for the exchange of MFOR. Here the project had to delay the go live for a couple of months due to some external impacts. And at the current moment, it's foreseen that the MARI platform goes live in a go live window mid-August to mid-September. I think the platform or the project foresees to confirm the exact go live date at the end of July. And of course, the platform or the project was working intensively on preparing the go live of the platform and the first accessing TSOs over the past month. Major milestones were to finalize the AOF, to finalize the go live preparations, and also, as mentioned before, the signature of the intellectual property right agreement with TERRE. And with this, I would hand over to my colleague Ignacio, who will present you or describe you a little bit more the implementation of the different methodologies. Ignacio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. Could you please go to the next slide? Just a clarification, there was a comment in the chat by Matthew Franzen, and yes, of course, these the limits of 15,000 euro plus or minus 15,000 euros applies during a transient period. Once all TSOs will be operating in the platform, these price limits will be removed. It's I guess it's a price at a transient period of 4 years that is described in the proposal that was approved by Acer last February 25. And another remark is that the Terre platform will apply these price limits starting tomorrow. So just for your information. And well, I will describe regarding the cross-zonal allocation and exchange of balancing capacity or sharing of reserves. We have, according with Articles 40 and 41, that are focused on co-optimization and market-based. All cross-zonal capacity allocation methodologies have been approved. There is one remark, is that the Article 42 regarding economic efficiency, although the proposal made by Greece and Italy was approved by Acer, finally economic efficiency is not going to be implemented, and TSOs are just focused on day-ahead time frame to procure reserve, both using co-optimization or market-based or inverted market-based approach. So regarding co-optimization allocation, at the end of 2021, there was an implementation impact assessment that was submitted to NRAs, and this impact assessment covers is aspects such as linkage of bids, impact on markets, also the cost of implementation, governance issues, and this impact assessment now has been derived in another document that has been recently submitted to NEMOS last June 17th, and is the set of requirements, high-level design set of requirements for price coupling algorithm. So basically, is the different approaches that we, as TSOs, we see feasible approaches and alternative approaches to change in the future, possibility to change in the future the Euphemia algorithm to somehow optimize at the same time the use of cross-border capacity, considering at the same time balancing day-ahead energy bids and balancing capacity bids for different products. So we would be able to consider 6 different products of reserve. So namely replacement reserve, manual FRR, automatic FRR, reserve in both directions, upward and downward. So basically we have submitted to NEMOS these high-level design requirements in order to somehow establish the framework to potential changes in Euphemia algorithm to be able to match at the same time and to optimize at the same time cross-border interconnection capacity between energy bids and reserve bids. Somehow adaptation of day-ahead capacity calculation process of each CCR to be able to consider cross-zonal capacity. Also, we are considering regarding the market-based allocation. We are considering one single cross-zonal capacity allocation process per CCR. As I already mentioned by Sarah, we are considering a harmonization process that at the end of the year will harmonize the different optimization market-based, inverted market-based. So the allocation of cross-zonal capacity, and also at the same time harmonization between different CCRs of the capacity calculation between CCRs that will be used in the time horizon of balancing. Regarding the already go live approach in Europe that already interchange capacity. We have two voluntary already go live approaches. One deals with FCR, procurement of former coal primary reserve in Europe, or now frequency containment reserve. It's an initiative between German and Austrian TSOs. No, German and Austrian and Swiss TSOs, but are already used by a lot of TSOs in Europe, and almost 1/5 of the total capacity needed in Europe, in continental Europe, of FCR, which, as you know, this total requirement is 3,000 megawatts of FCR to be procured. Almost 1/2 of this total procurement capacity is being traded in this FCR platform established between Swissgrid and APG. And also we have this already go live initiative between German and Austrian TSOs to procure FCR reserve using by now is a limit capacity of 80 megawatts of the available capacity between Germany and Austria to be used and somehow to be optimized, considering at the same time the bids, reserve bids coming from Germany and from Austria. And in 2021, the benefit for this market coupling of AFRR reserves has derived a benefit of 17 million euro. So it's quite a good increase in social welfare. So these are just examples of integration, not only on the side of balancing energy activation that has been already described by Sarah, but also in the world of reserve procurement. This market coupling are bringing benefits to Europe, to both BRPs and BSPs. So social welfare is for sure increased through this integration of markets. So could you please, Tilo, go to the next slide? So you can see here the already go live platforms from both balancing energy activation or netting. In 2021, we had Terre project, already go live since March 2020, an IGCC platform that officially became in-balance netting platform in June 2021, but the experience with IGCC comes since 2010, so it's several years ago. And I must say that, well, on one hand, Terre platform, social welfare gain along 2021, it's 435 million euro, comprising the period from March to December 2021. We haven't put, according to Terre agreement, the social welfare gains in January and February, due to the fact that several TSOs in Terre, participating in Terre, were using inelastic demand. So the social welfare numbers turn out to be a little bit unrealistic. And we are just comprising this period from March to December, where most of TSOs are using elastic needs. Social welfare numbers are more adequate. And regarding IGCC, I must say that at the beginning of 2022, this year we have overcome the 1 billion euro of savings due to not activating AFRR thanks to this netting in real time. So the experience with IGCC, not only from the point of view of economy, of not activating AFRR in real time and avoid this source of cost for the system, but also from the point of view of increasing the availability of AFRR reserves due to this netting. So this experience is being very good. And also another good experience comes from the fact that IGCC experience for all TSOs that we are already connected to IGCC. It's very important as a previous experience to joining Picasso platform in the coming months or years. So this is the IGCC for sure. It's a very good experience of integration of very close to real time, 4 seconds previous to real time activation markets. And you can see here the already mentioned this cooperation of reserve procurement between Germany and Austria is savings of 17 million euro, comparing the couple approach versus the decouple approach. If you consider that ATC for the capacity available, cross-border capacity available for procurement of reserves between Germany and Austria is equal to 0. So just by comparing the bits, keeping the same bits in both sceneries, couple and uncouple, we have determined this 17 million of difference in the Austrian-Germany cooperation. Regarding FCR cooperation, it appears the procurement cost decrease of 483 million euro for final consumer, but at the same time we should it's not put you can see the number in the balancing report itself. Also there is a decrease in the incomes to providers of FCR, so the net social welfare amount it's around 150 million euro. So considering the gaining for the final consumer, considering the reduction of incomes due to this FCR couple cooperation, using as you know, FCR is only using transmission reliability margin. It's not using previously reserved cross-border capacity, but the net social welfare that you can find in the balancing report itself is around 150 million euro, considering the impact for both BRPs and BSPs. Could you please, Dilo, go to the next slide? Regarding the balance settlement harmonization, as you know, the methodology, the harmonization methodology, was approved in July 2020, so it has to be implemented by all TSOs in January of 2022. And I must say that there is a transition to evolve all TSOs to a 50-minute imbalance settlement period. According to EB regulation, has to be implemented in January of 2021, but quite a few TSOs has asked to their respective NRAs for derogation. It's the case for the Spanish system, and this maximum derogation it's 1/1/2025. In Spain, our goal is to implement this change, this evolution towards imbalance settlement period of 15 minutes in October 2023. So how is the picture today? In 1/1/2022, we had 15 TSOs with already evolving towards imbalance settlement period of 50 minutes. Several of them had already implemented in their respective systems, as you know, this 15-minute imbalance settlement harmonization. And well, 12 TSOs, this is the case of the Spanish TSO, have asked for derogation. Regarding additional components, such as scarcity component or financial neutrality of TSOs, that is described in this Article 9, paragraph 6. There are 18 TSOs that are applying since 1/1/22 additional components beyond the balance settlement price itself, and 11 TSOs are not currently applying any additional component. And regarding the usage of dual pricing, that is still possible in the harmonized methodology of imbalance settlement process. 8 TSOs are still applying since 1/1/22 dual price in some conditions, and 21 TSOs are not applying, are just applying single price for imbalance settlement pricing. And I guess this is the last slide.
Yes, thank you very much, Ignacio. So I think we can wrap up today's presentation before we enter the Q&A. So as we have seen during the beginning of the webinar, market integration entails major benefits for the society in terms of economic efficiency, security, and sustainability. So I think it's fair to say that under difficult conditions, we as TSO, of course, always together with our partners, so NEMOS, NRAs, and ACER, reached again important milestones during the recent year. So in particular, we have introduced the new Market Coupling Steering Committee, which will make the decision-making process more efficient and generate synergies for the single day ahead and intraday coupling. Moreover, we have now one common single day ahead coupling in place across all EU countries. A major milestone, of course, is the go live of the day ahead flow-based allocation in the core CCR. So this will make the allocation of cross-zonal capacity much more efficient for almost 300 million people living in the core area. And on the balancing side, we have seen the successful go live of the imbalance netting platform, which will add millions of euros of social welfare gains to the ones which are already provided by existing balancing platforms and corporations. And we have the upcoming go live of the Mari and Picasso platform, which will also increase security of supply and economic efficiency of balancing activities even further. So maybe as a last word, so because we also have observed that there is a very active debate on how to improve or develop electricity markets further. So for us as TSOs, the well-functioning and the undistorted electricity market is very essential. And we think, as presented today, I think ACER calculated that the current market design is delivering about 34 billion euros per year to European consumers. So we actually think that people are highly benefiting from well-functioning and free markets. And therefore, we as TSOs are really highly committed to further integrate those markets and, at some point, achieve the final goal of having one single electricity market for all European citizens at the lowest cost. So, so I think having said that, we can enter the Q&A session. So I've seen that we now have a few questions, and I would maybe hand over to Thilo to distribute them to the panelists. And by the way, you can still pose questions. So just go to Slido and pose every question you have.
Yeah, thank you, Kilian. We have so far received a couple of questions on Slido. suggestion would be that probably Ignacio, if you want to take the question that we have regarding MFRR and RR calculations, especially for Italy, if you could say a few words about this.
Yes, of course. The question is, good afternoon. Are there any public data on the calculation of needs for manual FRR replacement reserves for any countries? For Italy, I noticed there is not any transparent data from their platform. Well, at least if we refer to balancing energy in real time, well, first of all, we should distinguish between the needs, reserve needs that are described in the system operation guideline and the balancing energy. So distinguish between reserve and energy. Reserve is already described, the criteria for FCR, AFRR, the manual FRR and replacement reserve. The concept of reserve itself, it's these requirements to determine the needs of each TSO are already described in the system operation guideline, but the needs, the balancing energy needs that are somehow fulfilled by each TSO using the different platforms, they're in the future Picasso and Mari, and also the netting of needs in real time that is being carried out by IGCC. Regarding the terra needs, I can tell you that in theory these needs should be published in the transparency platform itself. So it's the different components of balancing energy. It's is published by each TSO and in the transparency platform, and also at local level by each TSO. So I think this and the same with the rest of balancing products, with manual FRR, with AFRR, and it appears in the balancing report itself. You can compare the different the volumes of activation of energies, different components of balancing energy activated along 2021 for each TSO. Also the availability of bits coming from each TSO. So you have a lot of information in the balancing report itself. In the core part of the document, and especially in the section 5, key performance indicators. So you have this information there. So I think it's we are being as with the available information coming from each TSO. We have built up this balancing report, and of course the idea is to probably there is still margin for improvement in the coming years, but we are being as transparent as possible. So I don't know if I answer. Is there any additional question?
So I guess this answered the question. Thank you very much, Ignacio. So I think I would hand over now to Andre regarding the decoupling rules question that we received.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. So I'll just read quickly or summarize the question raised. So the question is essentially about that we have different decoupling rules in a day at market coupling across the regions in Europe. And is there something to be done or currently in the pipeline when it comes to harmonizing them? It's called here a level playing field. Actually, this is a rather loaded question because it entails multiple items of discussion. On the one side, if you're inclined to do so, you can read the feedback of all TSOs to CACM 2.0, where we not only tackled this part of fallbacks in day ahead, but we also tackled the challenge when it comes to long-term transmission rights in the FCA. Hence, we also included an update of the FCA throughout this consultation, where the remuneration is always based on the day-ahead spread, which of course makes the decoupling process rather tricky, particularly the one that we currently have in most countries, being a shadow auction done via JAO. In parallel to that, in CSM 2.0, but also in the current framework in ESTAC, we have an ongoing project looking at optimization of timings. And as I said earlier, we were able to squeeze out a couple of minutes in the process in June again, where of course also the fallbacks and the timings for the fallbacks are a major part of it. Hence, when looking at CSM 2.0 and the ongoing work that we have, we will in total discuss the question of fallbacks in order to either squeeze them into the timings that we currently have or find alternative solutions to that. Particularly an important point here is when it comes to the level playing field or one allocation mechanism when it comes to the fallback of day ahead is potentially the introduction of intraday auctions next year, which has currently also been looked at, how the procedures to have it done in intraday, then standard auction, or potentially using this also as a fallback, is something that we are assessing rather closely. So this is an ongoing work. For sure, TSOs are extremely interested to find a more appropriate means of a fallback. Whether they can be then harmonized on the full topology, that remains to be seen. But for sure, optimization, also looking at that the 3 o'clock timing is essentially taking again time away from the process with the IDAS, is something that we need to take into consideration. So potentially this overall discussion that we currently have will lead to that, and that it would be my personal hope that then in the next steps we can align on the TSO side, on the NEMO side, with the regulators, all the market participants, to have a more meaningful fallback process throughout Europe.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I would hand over to Zara regarding the question on Article 41 of EVGL.
Yes, maybe Tito, you could read out the question, as I cannot see it anymore.
Yeah, so the question was, do you have more information on which TSOs, group of TSOs, are already implementing the Article 41.1 of the EVGL based on the approved methodology, when the related balancing capacity cooperation will be announced?
Okay. So Article 41 of EB regulation, as said, refers to the market-based allocation of cross-owner capacity. And regarding the implementation, well, I assume that each CCR, which has an approved methodology for the market-based allocation process, is currently in the implementation phase. I cannot say anything on the different progresses made in the CCRs. I know there are discussions ongoing in core. I assume this is also the case for the other CCRs. And I think the second part of the questions refers more to the application of this methodology. And here we do not have yet any confirmation of a balancing capacity cooperation that they are going to apply market-based allocation. I think there are discussions ongoing. There might be interest of applying it, but so far no cooperation or TSOs have confirmed to actually apply this market-based allocation.
Perhaps just for complement, Sarah, I think that perhaps the first region to implement this market-based is Nordic countries, and it's probably happen along 2022. But it's just my idea about no confirmation. But and I know that there are several Cores is also there are already several all initiatives that has been proposed to Acer or NRASA has been already approved. As mentioned before, economic efficiency initiative between Greece and Italy finally is not going to be implemented, and I know that Italy is implementing the inverted market-based approach. So there are already several CCRs that are in this process, but also, as you know, there is a process of harmonization of the different CCRs. The harmonization proposal will be submitted in December of 2022. So probably this harmonization proposal will bring some additional adaptations, such as, for instance, gate closure time of the different balancing reserve products to be used in every category, in optimization, market-based, inverted market-based. So we are in such process currently. Also, a big issue is the role that is going to play in the future the regional coordinating centers, the RCCs, facilitating this procurement of reserves in regional basis. So we are also cooperating with between DSOs and RCCs in this process, and after harmonization of both allocation and calculation that will be submitted as mentioned before at the end of this year, 2022, there will be a parallel proposal of procurement and the role that RCCs, regional coordinating centers, are going to play in this facilitating process of this regional procurement of reserves. So maybe if you have additional question, please go ahead.
Okay, as there's no follow-up question, I would hand over now to Kilian regarding question on pricing. So the question was, what is ENTSO-E's strategy in case many EU countries start to regulate prices of electric energy?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. So I think, first of all, it's very important to mention that we as DSO think that the current market design delivers tremendous savings for consumers. So I think I just mentioned it before. So I think it's ESA calculated the figure, and I think it's 34 billion euros per year. So, and having said that, I think it's very important to assess maybe short-term measures against its long-term implications. So, because maybe sometimes something, can taste very sweet and for the short term, but it can have a disastrous effect for the long term. So, and therefore, I think so that is very important that those measures do not destroy what we have achieved, also looking maybe to other countries or continents. So when it comes to the concrete questions, I mean, do we have a strategy on regulated prices? We observe that some member states are introducing price caps, while there are others who are very much in favor of free markets and have actually another idea and do not introduce price caps. And therefore, we think that it's rather a topic for member states, and therefore we do not have a specific position on that one. But of course, we observe the developments, and we also have a dedicated chapter in our report. So in case you are interested in further information on that one, I would recommend to go to this chapter.
Thank you very much, Kilian. Andre, do you want to take the question on CACM 2.0?
Sure. Just have a look at it. The question is.
So I can read out.
Could you maybe read it again for me?
Yeah, I'm very happy to. So, what will early implementation of CACM 2.0 focus on?
Yeah, interesting question. Of course, as you may know, TSOs and NEMOs have a somewhat different understanding when it comes to the question on the MCO and the market coupling organization. Nonetheless, we support many items of CACM 2.0, which we deem very relevant. Hence, there are actually a multitude of elements to which we are currently looking at. Of course, one being, as I said earlier, the optimization of governance in order to meet the challenges that we are facing today, tomorrow, and thereafter. The second element, of course, will be the question of future governance between which organization shall be then relevant and under what circumstances to approve measures taken under CACM 2.0. This is somewhat delineated already in CACM, but as you may know, the details are, the devil are within the details, and this is something that we're working on, and we want to have it settled much earlier than CACM 2.0 coming into force in order to already work in the right direction. And therefore, one example would, for example, be the TCMs, the terms and conditions or the methodologies, which need to be developed. So that would be a major item very, very early. Want to get clarity who is in charge of which TCM, how does it work governance-wise, how does it work resourcing-wise, what would be a proper timing to start drafting certain elements, where is potentially also bigger pain point, operationally speaking, for example, as I said earlier, in line with the question raised, the timings are a major challenge, and of course, additional processes or process harmonization underneath this discussion, for example, fallbacks, is something that we will take on supposedly earlier. So we would be hopefully ready as soon as possible when CACM enters into force to formalize also proposals that we will bring forward. So a short answer, but it's really a multitude of elements which we are currently working on, and we are hopeful that we make a decisive step in the right direction with the next MCCG, and I suppose also at this meeting the market coupling consultative group, more ideas would be then presented how to move forward to tackle the challenges that we have ahead. Thereby also engaging the users of the systems, the stakeholders, market participants, to see also whether their preferences are met with the steps that we like to take further.
Okay, great. Thank you, André.
Sure.
In looking at the time, we're about to close the session. I would like to hand over to Kilian for the closure.
Yeah, landing on points. So I think we answered all questions. Yeah, so the only thing to say, so thank you very much for attending today's webinar. So I think it was an interesting discussion, and I'm very pleased that we got so many questions in the end. And yeah, thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Thank you very much.